Welcome everyone to our webinar on how to report across GoldMine and another database without transferring data. Our presenter today is Rob Macklack, President of MasterMine Software, the dynamic and award-winning management toolkit for GoldMine. Take it away, Rob.
Thank you very much, Carnegie, and welcome everybody. I want to thank you for coming to see my presentation this afternoon on how to report across GoldMine and another database. This presentation is part of a series of webinars we're hosting to educate GoldMine users on different reporting and data management topics. We would love your feedback on this webinar and your topic suggestions. Your opinion is very important to us in terms of shaping what we invest our presentation time with. So let's go ahead and get started. Today I will be covering the topic of reporting across databases, which often comes up as you think about managing the flow of information through your company across applications. So we'll quickly list some types of databases that you might want to report across. We will talk about reasons for reporting across them, and we will discuss why you may want to avoid transferring data, which is often the alternative or a partial alternative to reporting across them. And then we'll look at what options are available to you currently for reporting and discuss which ones are best in various circumstances for handling this particular need of reporting across databases. And finally, I will end by demonstrating a cross-application report in Excel that uses GoldMine and another outside database to show you in practice what the linking looks like, and that linking of the databases is really kind of universal regardless of which kind of reporting tool you wind up using to do this, although I will be working within Excel, which is a sort of a function of our product MasterMine. So that last portion will be probably 10-15 minutes, and it won't be terribly technical. We'll be mostly looking at, we will look a little bit at the technical connection of the databases, but then we'll also get into some of the results that you can get by doing that sort of reporting. So typically when you think about reporting across databases, these are the types of data that GoldMine using companies want to consider. There is, of course, the data that's in your customer relationship management, your CRM software, which in this case will be GoldMine. But usually you have processes that flow through CRM to other applications. So for example, if you have an outside proposal writing software or quoting software, such as QuoteWerks, which works well with GoldMine and enhances, in fact, the kinds of quotes and proposals that you can do from GoldMine data. That would be a typical way that data flows out of GoldMine into this other application, and which you logically would want to report across if you want to capture the entire sales process. Then, of course, sometimes you do your quoting or your proposals right out of GoldMine. A lot of organizations do that and capture the forecast sales and such, and even the completed sales within GoldMine, but then your process may flow from there to an accounting software. MasterMine or QuickBooks are probably two of the most common ones. Then beyond that, of course, there's your fulfillment, however you fulfill what it is that you've sold, customer service management software you may have, or ERP, or any number of possible other related applications that your data may flow through. So since you came to this webinar, presumably you have an interest, a specific interest in the topic of reporting for a certain kind of data in your company. So I'd like to ask each of you to go to the question box in the GoToWebinar dialog and type in what other kind of data you'd like to report together with your GoldMine data. And it may be one of these that's listed here on the page, but what I'd like to know is the specific application name as well as what type of data it is. And I'll give you just a moment to do that. I'll put up the question here. Which programs or data types do you plan to report across? So please go ahead and put something in under question for that. I'm seeing a couple of those come through already. I see an accounting MasterMine there. I see another billing and accounting and FileMaker Pro, and something else I don't recognize. Okay, let's move on here. So why should you do reporting across databases? Now that's the answer may be completely obvious to you, or it may not be. So I'm really briefly going to handle this one. So the most common needs arise for reporting across databases at the management level. So for example, when you want to follow a sales effort all the way through from lead acquisition through sales activity, which usually is the part that is containing GoldMine, to quoting, to ordering, to actual dollars collected. If you wanted to follow that entire process, you might be going across 2, 3, sometimes even 4 different applications. And sometimes you just want to take some portion of that. You don't necessarily want to go across 5 different applications at once, but you may be looking at a shorter cycle, like just within marketing, where you might specifically calculate the lead cost, the cost of acquiring leads compared to the sales that are returned from the leads that you acquire, to come up with an ROI on specific campaigns or on certain methods of marketing. More broadly, just as a way of monitoring the workflow through the company as that flow goes from application to application, it makes sense to have checks in place to spot when a job or opportunity falls through the cracks. For instance, when a sales gets closed and then needs to move on to fulfillment in your production system or your customer support system, you want to make sure that that handoff happens effectively, and you don't wind up having somebody close a sale but then not deliver on the product. So monitoring workflow handoffs would be another fairly obvious time when you'd want to do this kind of reporting. The question comes up, and we often have this when we're consulting with customers. They start to think that, well, if we want to see information in GoldMine, or we want to see information in the context of GoldMine data, we are going to need to transfer that data from one application into GoldMine. One of the most common things we see is people actually transferring past sales data, past dollar amounts or past invoiced amounts or some such from out of their accounting and into GoldMine to actually keep it in fields in GoldMine. And they do it specifically so that they can do reporting. Well, that may make sense sometimes, but there are important reasons why not to do actual transfers of data if you can avoid it. One of the most obvious ones is that it's fairly risky. When you go to establish the data access into that other database and start transferring the data out, especially if it's sensitive information, you're taking it outside the security of that application, let's say your accounting system, and putting it into a less secure environment or potentially less secure environment. There is, beyond that, of course, the possibility of creating errors. Whenever you move data from here to there, if you're only doing it one time, you may very well be able to follow up on all the loose ends and make sure that everything works the way it should. But if you're doing it as a process, a repeatable process, then sooner or later you're going to start to see errors creep in, especially when you're moving the data from one place where it's manipulated to another place where it's supposed to be more or less static. You're going to start to see discrepancies develop between the two different sets of data. You might have to set up a reconciliation situation so that you're always keeping them accurate, but that can wind up being a lot of work. It can be expensive, especially if you're having that be done by an outside service. And I guess I'll just add on top of that, if you try to make that automatic by building a software connector, that also can be potentially expensive, as well as locking you into a particular process, locking you into a certain way. Once it's programmed to move data from the one to the other, you are kind of stuck following that exact same process, so that if your needs change over time, the connector itself might have to be adjusted or reprogrammed in some ways, in addition to whatever changes you make to the applications on either end. So that's just a quick observation regarding why you probably don't want to transfer data if you can avoid it. So what's available to you as a GoldMine user in the way of applications to help you do reporting across databases? I'm going to talk about MasterMine. MasterMine is an application for GoldMine that is Excel-based. It is built to do reporting within GoldMine for the most part. Actually, it knows GoldMine very, very well, so that as an end user you don't need to. It's very closely built around the user experience in GoldMine, unlike, say, Crystal Reports and Microsoft Access, which are really more generic kind of reporting applications that require a good deal more knowledge on the part of the user than MasterMine ever does. So those are reporting options that are available to you. All three of them are certainly capable of reporting across multiple databases. In today's example, I'm going to show you in MasterMine, but the principle that I use, or the principles that I apply to do that, are really going to be universal to however you address your data. I also want to mention, though, GoldMine's GM plus View tab, which is a very powerful function inside GoldMine, and it always surprises me when I encounter organizations that aren't using it at all and yet use other applications where related data gets passed around between them. So GM plus View is a tab within GoldMine that actually allows you to do queries out to other databases, non-GoldMine databases, as well as GoldMine itself, and present that information at the account contact level so that end users see that information in GoldMine as though it were actually part of the GoldMine database, but it's really not. So it bypasses that entire problem of transferring data while at the same time making it almost transparent with regard to other applications. So of course there are other reporting and business intelligence options outside of the ones that I've listed here. Cognos and business intelligence applications that you can purchase. They are, for the most part, far more expensive than most GoldMine using organizations get into, but they are out there. So I'd like to ask one more quick question for the attendees here. If you have used any of these for the purposes of reporting across databases or made a run at doing it and failed, I would like to know about that. So if you can, again, I'm going to ask you to post that under the questions. Our reasoning for asking this is partly because we assume if you're here at the web on this webinar, you probably have faced this problem before, or maybe you just gave up when you were faced with it before. So what do we need to do? What do we need to get together basically to be able to report across GoldMine and other databases? So in this case, I'm actually going to go out and show you a report that we've built that goes across GoldMine and QuoteWerks, a quoting application whose data is kept in the same place as our GoldMine data. So to start with, it's essentially our process would be to build a report in whatever the application is that you're going to use. I will build it in MasterMine, or I've already built it in MasterMine actually. And then basically from there, the only restraint on whether you can pull in information from another database is whether you can expose the connection string that gets to the target information and have an appropriate driver to extract the information. These days, most databases are ODBC compliant, which means an ODBC driver would typically be what you would use. There are really two basic types of connection that you might have out to the additional data. One would be a direct connection, what I call a direct connection, which would mean you have a single connection to a database server such as SQL Server, which is typically where GoldMine is, and if that other database, if the second database that you're adding in, whether it's Macola or Mass90 or QuoteWerks or whatever, if that other database is also a SQL database and it's on the same SQL server, then you literally only have one login that needs to happen when the report runs, and so you essentially can have that query run straight out to that server and query information across the different databases. That will be the example that I show you here today because I wanted to do a fairly simple one. But it is also possible to have an indirect connection. So if the second database is not on the SQL server, if it's on a different SQL server, I've had a situation where we were reporting across two different SQL servers, but they were in completely different cities. And what we did was set up a connection from the one to the other as sort of a pass-through so that we could do reporting on the two together, and that worked out to be a fairly slick solution. It is possible using SQL Server or using Microsoft Access to actually create kind of a middle layer through which you can pass this information and do your reporting into the reporting software. And then finally, of course, there has to be a logical link. There has to be a key field for GoldMine and or the other application that you're pulling the data from. Usually that's the account number in GoldMine. You probably also have account numbers, unique account numbers in your accounting system. And both databases have to have that value in there. So that means you have to have some means of actually coordinating the two databases so that your account numbers are kept in a field in GoldMine or vice versa. So those are the criteria that have to be in place. And with that, I'm going to switch over and show you a specific example now. So we're going to go here. So in this demo database that I'm working in here, this example database, this is a small GoldMine 300 record database. It contains within it some forecast sales. And the forecast sale record, I'm just going to open up a sample one here to show you what this looks like. So these are forecasted sales that are actually generated within GoldMine by QuoteWerks, which is a pretty closely integrated application for expanding your means of keeping track of forecast sales and quoted sales, and for that matter, orders and even invoices afterwards. QuoteWerks integrates back with GoldMine. When you change data in QuoteWerks, it actually updates the GoldMine records. That's a little unusual for another application, but for our demonstration purposes here, it's actually pretty convenient. So this is an example of a quote document that's contained over here in QuoteWerks, which I'll show you here in a moment. And as you know, I'm sure, GoldMine's forecast sales are very simple. There's nothing there in details in terms of multiple parts that might be involved in this forecasted sale, or a lot of other potential information that you potentially might want to keep track of in relation to it. GoldMine, of course, does have another layer of complexity if you use the opportunities within it, and QuoteWerks also works together with opportunities. In the case that I'm going to do today, I'm just going to do reporting across these kinds of forecasted sales with the original contact information and reaching out to QuoteWerks for the additional information that's contained in QuoteWerks. So this is I'm going to take actually this document number here, and I'm going to switch over to QuoteWerks and open that document. Oh, did I put a space in there? I did. Okay, so this is the QuoteWerks document that is linked to the GoldMine forecasted sale. And the typical way that this happens, of course, is that you do a lot of activity on the GoldMine side. You acquire your leads. You keep track of the calls and appointments that you have with this prospect right up until the point where you're going to write them a proposal or do a quote. And then when you do, you switch over to QuoteWerks and you add in the quote information and link it back to the GoldMine record so that you have this continuous flow of information. Now, one result of that, of course, and why we're talking here about this today, is that what happens is you wind up with the sale sort of taking off from this point. The dollar amounts of all the individual parts of the sale are all contained in here, who you're going to ship it to, who you sold it to, other information about the sale. There's a limited amount of that information here, but it's not everything that's in GoldMine. So, for example, you don't know if you are, let's say, in marketing, and what you want to do is trace all the way through what are the dollar sales that we got from certain campaigns or certain sources of leads. You would not be able to do that once it's broken up across these two applications. So what I've done here is I've created a sample report, and I'm going to go ahead and close this one here. I'm going to open up in MasterMine a report that I created beforehand, but I'm going to show you under the covers what it looks like. So we're going to get just a little bit technical here to just show you how the link works, and then we'll back off a little bit and talk about what the reporting might look like. So in this sample report that I created here, this is Excel, which is the environment within which MasterMine works, and we have a query beneath this pivot table here that breaks down our forecast sales from QuoteWerks. So this is actually our quoted dollars out there in QuoteWerks. At the moment, it's for all time and all products and all sources and so on. 813,000 total in forecast sales there in quotes. And in this report, we've broken them down by source. So this is the source field from GoldMine together with the extended price or the quoted amount from QuoteWerks. This little list of 7 or 8 items or 7 or 8 sources actually represents, several hundred maybe or several dozen at least actual quotes in the database, but they're summarized nicely here. So we can see that from the Chicago Tribune, we have 117,000 in quotes out, from customer referrals, 27,800, and so on. So now I'm going to show you the back end about what the link looks like at the query level, and then we'll come back out of the details. So what I'm going to do is just open up inside of Excel here the actual connection to our database. I'm going to maximize it so that we can see it a little bit better. So up here at the top, this is the connection string that says we're using the SQL native client driver. So that is a server ODBC driver that's standard distribution with Excel or with Office. We're going out to this server. We have a single login actually to the GoldMine database. And this is the name of the GoldMine database. So you can name one database in your connection string that you're using, and we're naming the GoldMine one. Although, as you'll see from the command text down here, we'll see how we get around that to actually pull information from both GoldMine and QuoteWerks. Now, in our query down here at the bottom, we are, as you can see, pulling data from 2 of the GoldMine tables, Contact 1 and Contact 2, which if you're familiar with GoldMine, you know that that's the main contact tables that are in GoldMine. Now we could, of course, be pulling from the actual forecast sale records or from the completed sale records if we wanted to relate the history to those orders that are in QuoteWerks and so on. So all of that is very flexible. Here we're doing an interjoin between 2 GoldMine tables and 2 QuoteWerks tables. So at the QuoteWerks level, We have headers for each document, so each document has its own record in QuoteWerks, and then within each document there are also the individual items, the line items that are in the invoices or in the quotes listed. And so we are pulling that logic through here to provide it for both, 2 tables each from both databases. And so that's basically the logic. So we have the account number links contact 1 and contact 2 in QuoteWerks, or excuse me, in GoldMine. On the QuoteWerks side, the QuoteWerks header ID links through the item document ID, matches up those 2 tables. Here we're actually limiting it to only show QuoteWerks records that are quotes as opposed to orders or invoices, which are the other two types of documents in QuoteWerks. We're making it so that we're not including ones that are lost. And then here's the crucial part right here. This is the link between QuoteWerks via the account number, the GoldMine account number, which is stored in QuoteWerks records, and the GoldMine account number itself. And in order to make the 2 be of the same data type, we actually have to convert the account number to a varchar type so that it matches up with the way it's stored in QuoteWerks. So that, I apologize for getting a little bit technical there, but that is essentially what you need to have technically in order to make things match up on the back end. And this query might look very similar if you were doing this in Crystal reports. It doesn't necessarily only go this way in Excel, although it's nice and visible and easy to get to in Excel here. But that, this same principle would apply whether you're doing that in QuoteWerks or Microsoft Access or something else. So finally, once you get this information into QuoteWerks and you're able to work with it, how do you go ahead and make this, or what are some things that you can do with it? How do you make it useful for yourself? So in this report, I have, as I explained before, what we've got here, the summary of source by the actual dollar amounts in the sale. And down here I have a graph of the same information that's there. And this graph and this table are actually interactive. So one way to further break this down might be to look not just at, since these are all the quotes that we have outstanding all together for all time, it might make sense to break this down by, well, when were the campaigns done, or what were the campaigns specifically that brought these leads in? So in my GoldMine database, I have a campaign field. That's actually our key 5 field. So what I've done is when I drag the campaign field in here, now I can see an actual, this is a report by lead source and which campaign that lead source came from, showing the relative dollar amounts of the values of what came out of that. So looking at the graph here, which makes this a little easier to read than just looking at the numbers, clearly trade shows and web imports are our 2 greatest sources of leads, where trade shows are clearly something that we have a certain dollar investment in, and it shouldn't be too hard by getting more specific on which trade shows we went to and so on, which of course we can do because we've got that information in GoldMine, to actually break down which trade shows are paying off for us, which are the best ones to invest in, which ones should we be investing more in, whatever makes sense for you. So that's one example of a report that you can do that way. I've put together a few other ones that I'm going to show you here before we wrap up. So this would be a report out of QuoteWerks so that you can choose the individual quote that you want to look at, and showing within it the individual items for the sale. So this screen actually would pretty much match what you see in QuoteWerks, except that it also incorporates or takes into account the GoldMine information that's associated with it. So while you can't do within QuoteWerks, you can't look at a single record and see related GoldMine information there, you can pull anything that's related from GoldMine over here. So in this case, I might do, include the account manager on the GoldMine side, the campaign information, or maybe do a summary of our sales by, let's say, the industry field, which is again in GoldMine but not in QuoteWerks anywhere. So maybe I would want to do, I'll just do a variation of this one where we take all of our forecast sales that are going to aviation and do it across all of our documents. And now we have a summary of our forecast sales by how many sales in each of the different industries. Again, key industry is just a key field in our GoldMine database, along with the dollar amounts here. You can pretty easily imagine how important that would be to a marketing manager, for example, to be able to really figure out where are the appropriate places to spend our marketing dollars. Here is more of a sales management kind of a view. This one breaks up, going down the left-hand side, the item types from QuoteWerks. So these are the individual types of items. Again, in QuoteWerks, you can break down your individual sales into a lot of different components, and that's really useful. It's especially useful if you can then relate that again to the sales effort that goes into it. So in this case, we've got our sales not just by item type, but broken down by the actual account manager who's doing those sales, so that we can, for example, analyze, well, it looks like Nancy H. sells a lot of speakers and a lot of memory, but Tina L. sells a lot of plasma. I'm assuming that's plasma TVs and not blood plasma. So you can see pretty easily where you would go from there as well, adding complexity or dealing with this in other detail. And by the way, from here, if you have MasterMine, you can also drill through back to the GoldMine records. So if you were to, for example, drill down on Tina's plasma sales here, there might be a number of different accounts, account prospects that we were selling to. So Premdor Systems looks like one of them, or Trips. If we double click here on Premdor, this will actually get us back to the GoldMine record that allows us to do some additional work with this. So just want to throw in a little plug there for MasterMine itself. And then finally, the last one that I've got over here is a monthly report. This one just shows, so I wanted to do the time element in this report. Here again, our forecast sales for the document year, where the year of the document is 2011, or the document date being the the date when the quote was actually created. So we can see how many, we can see the dollar amounts, and maybe break that down further by industry, or do a month-by-month comparison for the year, going across, maybe showing all of the months would be the most likely way to go. Going to do a setting for that field to show all the months. Just for example, that would give you a nice calendar going across of when those happen. I'm going to do one last variation on this, and then I'll end this. So here's a variation where we show a breakdown of our sales by the number of them that fall in each month of the year. We could put a total at the end, and then right next to that, the dollar figures. Sometimes the one is the most important way of seeing it. Sometimes the other. We make it easy to do both here. So that is it. I want to thank everybody for coming to our webinar today. I'm going to switch back just briefly to wrap up here. We do have some future webinars planned. A week from today, we'll be doing another webinar that's really much more about MasterMine itself, talking about specifically the kinds of ways to get into GoldMine data that non-techies would use. So if you are available next Tuesday at 10:30, please go ahead and sign up for that webinar. You can find all of our webinars at the URL that's down there. Apparently, it is not currently linked from our homepage, but we'll try and get that linked very soon. And again, we ask you, please give us feedback on this webinar as well, so that we can plan future ones and make them more useful for you. So for those of you who are not MasterMine users yet and who are on this call, I also want to offer a free 30-minute consultation looking at your GoldMine database. We can talk about what it would take to actually do reporting across multiple databases in your specific situation, and I will do that with you personally. And if you also at the same time, or in parallel to that, want to talk about your general reporting needs and data management needs, and by the way, data management is a whole area we didn't even touch upon here today, but if you've got GoldMine, we have some great tools to help you to actually manipulate and set up your GoldMine data in the way that actually works. And that is, I think that's all we've got for today. So I'm going to move that on to the slide. This is my contact information. If anybody has any questions or follow-ups they'd like to bring up, please call my number there. If you would like to set up that free half-hour session, you can contact me directly, but I'm going to actually move it back to this last slide here to contact Stephanie in our office. So once again, thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us today. Please send us feedback, and otherwise have a wonderful day.